right, should be up and running here. Both streams should be live and going. Should be able to hear me, should be able to see charts. We just closed about 1 minute ago, so we'll take a look at the Qs and SPY final numbers here, talk about what to expect going into tomorrow. Let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, this is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for November 22nd, 2021. Qs down 1.16, SPY down 0.32, and then IWM, which we were already bearish on after it ended the trend last week, closing down 0.43. Okay, so hopefully you guys had a good end to last week and a good weekend as well. We were bullish on the Qs and SPY into the end of last week and bearish on the IWM. And the Qs and SPY here got some follow through, continuation higher. We talked about the hourly buy setup here that we got, and we're looking to see if it would continue from there. It did continue for a couple days, so this morning even got some more continuation. Qs got new highs there, SPY also got new highs. But what's interesting about today, especially the way that we closed, is that we failed on a buy setup. Okay, so in the same way that the IWM ended the trend right before I was out, the Qs and SPY are doing the same thing. So IWM tried to hold the lows here and then tried to produce just slightly a higher low there, and you see that eventually failed. So Qs and SPY here now breaking down on the hourly as well. So if tomorrow we base, can look to be bearish on the market underneath the base. If we get a sell set up, we get a slight rally tomorrow into the afternoon, then we may have a sell set up. So starting to look more bullish. Now, right now, just going to be neutral going into tomorrow morning because we need to see the sell setup and the base first. Okay, so into the morning tomorrow, going to be neutral first. We still have uptrends on the daily and the weekly on the Qs and SPY. But, pretty bearish what happened today. We tried to move higher, and then we got a pretty steep sell-off here. And what's even better about the bearish case is that we had this attempt to bounce. Even when I was on the mic here in the afternoon, I didn't think we would make new lows. So I was saying, with, 30 minutes or so left in the day, that we'll probably just end up using today's low. If we take that out, then we'll be looking for the next sell setup breakdown for kind of the initiation of the bearish bias. And before at the end of the day, took it out. So now we're already going to be looking for that. So neutral going into tomorrow morning. If we get a base into the afternoon or sell setup into the afternoon, that would be the earliest that we would start to be bearish on the Qs and SPY. All right, let's go over today's plays here. Really, the thing that focused on off the bat was the CRNC. Unfortunately, it was very spready, so I ended up passing on it. Here was the base breakdown. Gave you the numbers on it. Base breakdown there. I think it needed to get to like 82 was the target. It got to 8201, so very, very close there on the CRNC. We looked at it again in the afternoon, but at that point already got to target on the CRNC. I thought that pivot was support, so that's not something I would want to initiate a new short on. And so yeah, it did look like that ended up being a pretty decent target, but you can see why. This is a pretty nice gap here on the CRNC. AUPH was a pretty good gap, but it was a secondary. I don't think it was a very concrete secondary when it wasn't the completion of a secondary. It's just the announcement of one. So that worked pretty well. I think this was good to play. Just kind of didn't play it aggressively because it was a secondary. But if I had looked into it a little bit more, I think would have had kind of permission to play. As you might expect, the longs today did not work out as well. I did go after this PRVB. Here's the daily. You can see it's gapping up over this base, maybe room up to 815 or so. Here's what I played, and it looked okay for most of the morning here. It's kind of a deep pullback, so I played it as a secondary entry. So that pullback's a bit too deep, so I played it over that topping tail. Did live through this pullback, did get new highs here. It was up about an hour and a half, but I wanted more, so ended up didn't work. So gave that back on the PRVB. That didn't follow through. And then kind of the last thing here, this NIU was in basically the whole morning, I guess. Um, yeah, did have to kind of live through this little sell setup here. And then it looked like it had bottom, and then as the market came in again, just kind of got the whole thing out at 20 bucks. It never really got to a big target on this NIU. I'll show you what the daily looked like. This is why I liked it. So there it is. So a lot of things work to the downside. I wouldn't be surprised if this continues more tomorrow. So I think this is just a very bearish looking daily. And then closing here pretty weak. Surprised it didn't work better given how much the market got sold, but don't really have much control over that. So, overall, and I said this too at the open when we were going through the gaps list that the gaps list not very good. We only had a few things on the as favorites for the open. I think it was like three things, like one long and two shorts. So I was saying, if that's any indication of how aggressive we should be today, then probably shouldn't be too aggressive. And I think that's kind of the way it turned out. Like I said, the PRVB couldn't get that to a target, and then it failed, and then the NIU couldn't get that to a target, but still, closed okay with some profit, but not very very much. And the AUPH was a secondary, and CRNC was a secondary. So you can see there's a lot of things that just aren't quite perfect setup wise, not stuff that really had to do. I mean, these worked really well, but they on a different day they're a lot easier to kind of to ignore because you have other things to go after. When these and they have these issues of spread and things like that, then and that's the best there is. It does make it a little bit difficult, and so then you kind of just have to pass and live with it. It's a little bit harder to ignore them when there's not that much else to do, right? And it also is Monday, so Mondays have been pretty slow. I think slower lately than normal, but we'll see. We also do have a shortened week, a holiday week, so that also could play a factor in slowing things down. We're definitely getting out of earnings season. If you look at the list for this for tomorrow, you can see that it's getting pretty light. The lists are maybe like a dozen or so that are playable for the before the market, and then after market lists are maybe like a dozen or so playable things. So earnings list is getting pretty small. All right, so just use the morning list to see if there's a lot of good gaps. There might be a little bit more to do. If it's like today, there's only a couple things that have decent gaps. Then just know that probably not a good day to overdo it. Okay, but we'll see what we get tomorrow. There's still some things on the list, and we only need 3 or 4 good trades. Have a nice day. Okay, all right, have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.